Recording. And so welcome everyone to the April 3rd, 2017 meeting of Kubernetes SIG Apps. I'm Matt Farina. I don't think Michelle is going to make it today. She's traveling at the moment. And so let's get started. As far as announcements go, I don't think we have any announcements this week. We have the category slot for it, and there's nothing that I have that I know that specifically should be announced here. Does anybody else have anything that they're aware of that came out of KubeCon or Cloud Native Con that hasn't been conveyed yet?
Hey, this is Dan. I'm going to meet with Antoine later this week to go over some of the stuff that was discussed in 1.7 planning at KubeCon. So I know for those that made it, and sorry I wasn't there, but I'll get some of those notes and I'll add those notes this week.
All right, great. We're going to have a 1.7 planning portion later today, and so in this meeting. So we might have some time to dive into that a little bit. And specifically sharing in the chat here the link to the meeting minutes for today. And so you'll see it's pretty thin today, but that's all right. So if there's no other announcements, then let's talk about the key takeaways from KubeCon. Antoine, are you out there? Michelle suggested I start with you on this. Or, oh, maybe he's not on now. Does anybody want to share their key takeaways from KubeCon? What did you learn? What did you find interesting, in particular for app development and operation, that kind of thing? This is an opportunity to speak up if you were at KubeCon.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Sure can, thank you.
Yeah. That's Bill Gainbram. I'm joining this meetup for the first time, but I was also at KubeCon and just want to give my feedback. So for me, for one important takeaway from update perspective was that there were two sessions, one from Michelle and one from Joe Beda, where they emphasize the same topic, which is that there is more love needed for Kubernetes users or developers who use Kubernetes. So that was like an important theme for me, and that's why I'm joining this call and looking forward to work more on the SIG apps. That's been quite high level, but I think it's recognized that we have to make Kubernetes more approachable for developers, which I believe is one of the main topics of this SIG.
It is. So thank you for coming, and thanks for speaking up your first time.
You're welcome.
I have one observation, if I may share.
Sure, please.
Yeah, so I think that actually a lot of people don't need any new features in Kubernetes. So like many people are running the apps and they are just fine. Like there were some stands with people who were basically just running apps on Kubernetes and just using it without any sophisticated features, and it seems like they were quite happy with them. So there are quite a few users who are happy with how the project behaves right now. Of course, there are still people who want more, but I think that overall the project made a good is making good work of appealing to people who just want to run their apps. Of course, it can be simplified, streamlined. As Michelle said in her keynote, it can be made much easier for developers, but I think the overall direction is good from my point of view, from what I observed at KubeCon.
That's great to hear. Thanks for sharing that. Does anybody else have observations? I see there's some, if you are not able to unmute yourself and get your audio working, then you can type them into chat and I'll be happy to read them and share them for you. Let's see. I tried to unmute you who had brought it up.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, hi, Matt. Thank you so much. This is Pradipto here. We met at KubeCon Seattle, I believe.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I was at the KubeCon Berlin as well, and I agree with the person who just said. I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out the name. Who just spoke just before the previous guy, and the keynotes by Joe and Michelle definitely struck for me as very important. And even at the SIG Apps meeting, I think there were a few of us who were in the meeting as well, and we spoke around the same thing, how to make it easier. And it seems, and after speaking to Antoine and various other people during the conference, Altogether conference, I also felt that many people are facing the same problem, and many people are trying to solve the same problem, and each of us are having different takes towards the problem. For example, the Mirantis people are trying to solve it using app controller. There is obviously the most famous project out here being Helm. Then there is Compose and Open Compose, and various other people trying to do various other things. So that definitely strikes to me as a problem to be solved, and many people are trying to solve. So yeah, I just wanted to agree to the previous comment by the gentleman, and yeah, looking forward to work together on this with everybody. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for unmuting me. I couldn't figure out how to do that. I mean, the button just didn't work for me. Thanks. I'm good.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And if you want, did you figure out how the mute button? Oh, it worked to mute you, but it didn't work to unmute you. All right. So does anybody else have any other observations from KubeCon? Going once. Oh.
Hey, here, Antoine.
Hi, Antoine.
Hey. Sorry, I just had some problem. So quick, like to confirm with Predicto, I think during also the meeting, we more or less all agree that, and from discussion, we need to work on how to simplify writing resources. And this is going beyond templating. It's more like now we have to write many large YAML file. And so there is a couple projects like Open Compose, there is LibGSignet from EPSO, there is boot configuration, there is several projects going out now, and I really would like to drive a discussion together, working group, so we don't work in separate silo and discuss together how to simplify the first time experience to write resource. So when you go to to a team saying, okay, now you're going to move to Kubernetes, and they don't be afraid to say, oh, I have 10 different type of resource to write. They're going to be 100 lines YAML file. I think we can focus on this, and I will write an email summarize this.
Sounds good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any observations they'd like to share?
I'll go for one more. So not sure whether that's exactly the topic for this group, but my lightning talk with KubeCon was around cloud native design patterns, and I'm trying to write a book around Kubernetes patterns, but I wonder whether not just tooling, but things like use cases, patterns, best practices, things like that are a topic for this SIG or not. It's more like when you want to use Kubernetes as a developer, not a cluster administrator. There are common use cases or things you have to solve again and again. Whether documenting those is
yes, please.
this stake, because I had similar discussion with a couple of using the conference. They agree with that.
Yes. Also, there's also SIG App Lifecycle, which also deals with these issues, and they're supposedly a little bit more covering like how to deal with templatized config. You might want to just drop in there and see what they're saying. And if you see, and maybe the SIG and that SIG need to make sure we are clear to people as what SIG handles what.
We see, okay, I'll check out that SIG too.
Yeah, but I think that's very much a problem that needs to be solved, and documentation would help, because I know a lot of people asking those questions. Does anybody else? Go ahead.
We've talked about putting together these best practices. I know a lot of people were interested, or maybe it wasn't a lot of people, maybe a few people were interested. Did we ever follow up on that conversation? Do you know, Matt Farina? I know you were interested in that as well.
Yeah, and I think that it kept falling apart on coordination, probably my fault in getting folks together to do it. Only one or two people spoke up and being interested in writing some of that down. I think documentation isn't always that interesting, and we're all quite busy. But this is really important. So anybody who is interested, let's get the ball moving. But it didn't really get going before.
Okay, let's try one more time. I'll re-kick off the thread, and we'll see where we can get this time around. I know third time's a charm. So, is that okay?
Sounds good to me. Thanks, Michelle,
Okay.
and welcome. I wasn't sure you were going to make it.
Thanks. Yeah, I haven't crossed the English channel yet, so still got some internet. Maybe I'll have internet there too. Who knows? Anyways, I'll be quiet now.
Does anybody else have observations they'd like to share? Going once, going twice, and we'll move on to the next topic. Thanks, everyone, for all those observations. Some anonymous folks went ahead and documented those in the meeting minutes. If you wanted to look back to them, thank you, everyone. And so the next item we have on the agenda is the 1.6. We have a mini retrospective, and Jason's going to handle that. Jason, are you here?
I am indeed, yes.
Then the floor is yours.
All right. So yeah, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to help run the release retrospective. Obviously, it's always really good to get feedback as soon as we can in terms of release cadence, so it's all fresh in our minds. And to that end, I started a document. I'm going to paste a link to it in the chat. But the goal here is for you to go into this document here for a couple of minutes and enter in your feelings about what went well, what could have gone better, and what we're going to try and do differently for the next release 1.7. So you should have write access to that document. And if you write a what could have gone better or what we should do differently, I would request that you put your initials after it, just so that you can speak to it when we go through them, because it's really important to have clarity in these issues, because we don't want to have misunderstandings. So just to give a quick update on what the release retrospective is for, what are we trying to accomplish? Essentially, the goal is to have a blame-free place where we can talk about all the things that if we could rewind time and do things differently, what would we have done differently as a group? What are the things that, had we known what we know now, we could have optimized or changed? And how do we bring those forward to the next release so that we don't repeat our mistakes? And at the beginning of these retrospectives, because we're sharing a lot of information and ideas and feelings about something that was occasionally contentious, I think given my experience with the last several releases of Kubernetes, this particular one was more contentious in some ways than others because there were a lot of things being changed. It was also considered a stabilization release. So that can, when you start dealing with technical debt, that can raise a lot of feelings and concerns and questions. So what I would ask is everybody, as you're participating in this retrospective, to just be respectful of other people's opinions. And if you have a concern or something that you felt like could have gone better, and it deals with a specific individual, try and focus on maybe the process or how things around the interaction might have gone better, as opposed to focusing on the person in question. It just helps make things more productive and less pointed from a personal perspective, because half the times the problems that we run into are a result of technology or process running amok, or people with circumstances that were beyond their control. So I think it's important when we go through a retro to be very compassionate and empathetic to people's situations, especially if they might have inadvertently dropped the ball or had something go wrong. So with that in mind, let's proceed. It looks like some people are putting in some items in these bullet points, so that's really good. And let me go ahead and look at that real quick. Before we do that real quick, while people are filling those in, are there any questions from anybody in the group right now about this retrospective or what we're trying to accomplish? Great. And obviously, if you have questions as we move forward, please feel free to do that. So we're going to start with what went well. And I think SIG Apps did a ton of really great stuff this time around. So I would expect there to be quite a few bullet points here, but I'll go ahead and scribe while if anybody wants to bring stuff up. So I'm opening the floor for the next 5 minutes to anybody who has either shout outs to people who did a great job, things you thought went well in the release, and all that. So you got it, guys. All right. Well, apparently we have a SIG full of strong silent types. So I'm going to personally give a shout out to the SIG organizers, Matt and Michelle, and all the people who do the organization, because I'll tell you, so SIG Apps is one of the most active and most well-attended SIGs out there. So I think that a tremendous amount of appreciation should go to the organizers, because everybody has a day job that they're attending to as well, in addition to these things, as we all do. So being an organizer can sometimes be a thankless job. So I want to give that props out to everybody who's helping organize this very vital and active SIG. Anybody else have anybody they'd like to recognize? Okay, so in the list we have daemon set update got merged, which is awesome. And we have PM reps now to unblock us from somebody wrote something there but didn't finish it. Could somebody pipe up that wrote that? Because I can't tell actually what the rest of it was supposed to say. Actually, can anybody speak up just to make sure my audio is working?
You're on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Both your audios are working.
Okay, good.
Okay, the audio is working. Well, I didn't write this one. I think that the PM reps now unblock us from things that block us. I don't know another way to
Maybe
put
it's
it.
just general.
But to actually have folks who are good at that and capable in thinking about those things doing that, I always find that to be useful.
Cool. And then Helm left incubation to be a full-fledged project, the first to do so. Is that truly the first incubator to full?
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I wrote that, but somebody noted that to me before, and I can't remember if that's true.
I think I noted that, and that, to the best of my knowledge, that's true.
That's amazing. And I'll tell you, I do a lot of work with customers in the field, and Helm is absolutely indispensable. It is such a core part of the ecosystem.
Jason, could you talk about that sometime? Do like a 5-minute presentation that would be targeted by maybe people in this SIG that are contributing to charts and controllers, and so we can figure out how to do even better.
Oh, I would absolutely love to do that. I'll talk to Michelle about getting on the agenda to do that.
I would listen to you.
Great. Can I ask anybody in here who's a cluster operator to hop over to SIG cluster ops a little more frequently? Because we definitely need more operator experience on the flip side. So, okay, let's move on to what could have gone better.
One more thing, Jason.
Sure.
I just wanted to mention that the number of community contributions to Helm also has just increased and been incredible. We have more PRs now than we've been able to go through. So just the amount of people wanting to contribute and contributing code has just been incredible.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, so what could have gone better? Looks like Matt's got this one. Documentation of best practices. We keep talking about turning into an actual documentation. Could you speak to that, Matt?
Sure. This is as Michelle noted earlier, third time's the charm in trying to get this going. But the first 2 times we talk about it and something usually goes out on the mailing list and maybe a person jumps in, but we haven't been able to get the ball rolling on taking this idea of documenting best practices, these things that many of us know and share through word of mouth. It's a lot of times called tribal knowledge, the way we share it, and putting that down in writing and actually getting it down in writing from this idea that many of us agree is useful. And so that's something we could have done better because the second time happened during the 1.6 cycle.
And just from a personal standpoint, if you guys figure out a way to do that, I would love to catch that as well, because we have a very similar problem in the SIG cluster ops, where we have a lot of documentation that we're trying to get done, and we don't have a good place to put it, and 2, want to make sure that it's easily referenceable in some way that's pertinent to the project as a large. So if 2 out of however many SIGs there are struggling with this may be something that could use some cross-SIG collaboration for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on. I was confused as to who is responsible for triaging the 1.6 SIG apps issues in the Kubernetes issue queue. Michelle can't really speak to this, so I feel like this was pretty ubiquitous. Somebody else want to speak to this?
Yeah, so I'm Mikhail from OpenShift team. My first impression was that supposedly owners have to triage those failures and flaky tests in general. But it would be great if, as part of SIG Apps, we could sit down and coordinate the effort. Because, for example, I triaged most of the deployment failures because there were about 12, 13 failures. And yeah, we had in total 40 failures. Most of them were flakes from unrelated to our tests. I would, my general impression is that I would prefer that, we should coordinate on this effort more. I asked people who were responsible about stateful set and diamond set failures to look at them.
Great.
But yeah.
So I put a to-do item for the community, the SIG Apps community, to look at this. So when we get down to it, we'll see if anybody wants to volunteer as an owner or multiple owners.
Generally, when you're an owner, you are supposed not only to write code, but also to try and hunt down flakes. And I didn't see that in this release.
Okay. I'd like to collaborate more on tools that people in this SIG are working on. People ask for feedback and help, and I'm not sure how to ensure that happens, i.e. OpenCompose, Compose, Charts repo. Who wrote that, and could you speak to it, please? Anybody else want to speak to this? So I can add one thing here is that, so if people bring tools or things that they're working on into the SIG, the single best way to get feedback is to do a demo and to make sure that everybody in the group gets a good look at it. And the thing that demoing can be very frightening, especially when it's your own project, because the demo gods can either be with you or violently against you. So you know, don't be afraid to do that. We all have demos that don't go right. So don't be afraid to bring your projects in and ask for feedback.
And here's the thing, whether you're demoing a whole new project or just a feature on an existing one, we want to have those. You know, you'll see, for some of you who are new, you'll find that in a typical week, we'll demo one thing, sometimes two things. We regularly like to have short, quick demos to showcase stuff off. People like it, they see what's useful, they can give feedback, they can see where they invest. All around it turns out to be well. And so if you want to schedule a demo, reach out to Michelle or myself, and we're happy to help get that going. If it'll be your first time, you need a little help with that, we can help you figure out how to do that. We're more than happy to help you get a friendly demo on the calendar.
And don't forget, too, that these people who aren't in this meeting will actually go back and watch it on YouTube. So it gives you a really great avenue to get the word out about your projects, because I've seen some of the things people are working on just in their spare time, and they're absolutely incredible. So I would love to see some of those great things see the light of day more often, for sure. Okay, anybody else before we move on have anything that they felt like could have gone better for the 1.6 release? This is your opportunity, because if you don't bring it up now, it might come back to haunt us in 1.7. So I will ask, since we got a little bit of time here, how does the group feel about the connection to the product management process and the governance process overall? Is there anybody who had concerns or feelings about how that went this time, or has some input about that specifically? Because that's something that's starting to emerge at the community level, and I would love to hear your impressions about that and what might be improved.
Maybe I'll interject with this. Has anybody had interactions with the governance process and those things? Because I think, I'm sitting here going, which parts of the governance process have I interacted with? Have others done the same thing? It may be that some folks here haven't interacted with it or realized when they have.
Yeah.
Or maybe none of us want to talk much today.
That seems to be the thing. That's okay. Because
We
this
did,
document will stay active for a while. So, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say the Helm exiting the incubator would be governance, and other things that are asking to enter the incubator are interacting with governance too. So maybe that can prompt some people to think about stuff.
Thanks, Eric. That's exactly right. Okay. Well, if anybody thinks of anything that you'd like to add to this, we'll make sure that that this document stays available and alive. And if you want to retroactively add to the retro, go for it, and we'll make sure that gets looked at by SIG leadership for sure. So, last section is what are we planning on doing differently? These are specific actionable things that we want to do differently for the 1.7 release. I can imagine there might be some ideas here. So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to people who want to say, what are we going to do differently specifically?
Yeah, I think everybody might be in KubeCon comas.
It seems like, okay, well.
Jason, do you want to say, I mean, assume this document's going to stay open so people can cogitate on it and add feedback later, and maybe if there's new stuff, it'll just get echoed in a future meeting so people can have a week to think about it?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to circle back to this because like a lot of people aren't here as well. Like our attendance is pretty light, and I think a lot of that's because of travel and stuff. So it might be good to just touch on this again next week.
Okay. So I'm going to put an action item in there for revisit this document next week.
Just say if you're watching on a recording, it may not be too late for you to add to the document. How will they find that URL if they're watching a recording?
I will make a bit.ly that will be, let's see, SIG Apps Retro 16. SIG Apps Retro 16, essentially, a bit.ly. So.
And if they're watching it in a video, I'll put it in the comments section or the description of the video as well.
Okay,
Awesome.
cool. I will do that right now. Thanks for that suggestion. And I guess if we're going to leave it there, it sounds good. I'll go ahead and go make the bit.ly, and I'm going to turn it back over to your esteemed leadership to move forward with any final thoughts for this meeting. And thank you very much again for being a good audience and participating.
All right, and so we had one more item on the agenda for today, and that was a light 1.7 planning. And we have a document for that, which breaks down, this is our proposed work. So let me drop that document into chat so folks can pull it up. In fact, I can even share it just a moment. All right, the document should be shared. Can you all see it?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. And so some of this, a little bit of it is filled in already. We've got Kubernetes core, and within the Kubernetes core area, you'll see a few different places with work. And then there's Kubernetes tooling. There's Helm, there's app controller, charts, app registry, which used to be CNR, Compose, Open Compose, And so we've got a number of different things here. And you'll also see there are group codes. And I'll hide them here at the top for Google, Red Hat, Koros, Mirantis, and Deas, and you can add your own as needed. And so you'll see to a certain extent here, like under stateful set, you'll see the Google and Red Hat codes here. In here, like in the roadmap for JF Daemon set, you'll see 3 groups are coming together on that particular one. Some of the stuff, such as Helm, has a separate roadmap planning, and I didn't know, I don't know if any of the Helm folks are on today. If they wanted to, what the plan was, you can probably just link to their roadmap, which is separate, and you can engage over there. Does everyone know how to engage with the Helm roadmap process that's run mostly separate from SIG Apps, although they do come through here? If you don't, there is a regular weekly Helm meeting run by Matt Butcher, I think, that where they walk through the planning and all of that stuff. And then in order to actually graduate from incubation, I'll pull this up real quick. If you go to Helm, there's actually roadmap. It was one of the things that had to be was in the README. And so there is a wiki for roadmap discussion, which I think happens through issues. Michelle or Matt, if they were on, could walk through it. But this is where their roadmap is. And I will drop that in. And so one of the things we need to do, and so we can probably walk through this. I think the big thing is that we all get going on filling in what we anticipate for SIG Apps 1.7 planning. And I'm forgetting, when is 1.7 expected to come out? I'm forgetting the date right now.
And I'd just like to add, if anyone's ever experienced that they sent a PR or a proposal, it didn't get reviewed, now is the time to put something on here to like get your get in line for that process. If you don't put something on here and then you show up with a PR or a proposal halfway through development time, you're in a much worse shape, in my opinion, in terms of getting it in and feedback. This lets everyone sort of also budget some time to pay attention to what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Well, it's fantastic to think we come along with things and they get reviewed as they come in, because so much stuff comes through Kubernetes and all of the projects and everyone's so busy that this layer of organization really helps. And so if there's something you'd like to chase after here and you'd like it to be known about ahead of time or get some review eyes on it, actually getting it in out in other places, this is a fantastic place to do that.
And I'll just also add, I don't see this as being a firm commitment, so don't hold back. If you think you're going to work on something, put your name out there so that people know to collaborate with you and we can build critical mass. Don't feel like, oh, I can't put it there because what if I don't finish it?
Yep, and Matt, one other thing on the Helm roadmap as well. I just checked that link, and it's not quite up to date, so I'll work on updating that today.
Thank you.
If you want the most up-to-date, if you go to the milestone, everything's tracked in there on GitHub issues. But I can update the wiki there.
All right.
Yeah, so 2.3 is going to be coming out this week.
Yeah.
And then 2.4 next month.
All right. And here are the issues. Yeah. Nice organizational effort using the tools. All right.
Yeah, look at that.
And so how much of this do we want to walk through today? I'll leave it up to the group, because so for stateful set, I mean, that one's pretty well filled out, and Daemon set. For stateful set, is there anything missing here that folks know about? Perfect. How about Daemon set? Is there anything out there that we know, or for deployments, replica sets, for any of these 3 things, is there anything that folks know is missing or think might be missing that they've heard about? All right. Then we've got cron jobs. We've got these other Kubernetes core elements, improving TPR support and stable pods, which have been proposed. Is anyone on who can talk about those? And I see a bunch of this falls in the Red Hat camp. Little Google. Is there anyone on who can speak to these?
I think there was a document about improving third-party resources. Maybe you could put a link of it somewhere here.
Does
or is
anybody
it
have
not
the link?
really relevant?
Does anyone have the link? Yeah.
I will try to find it and provide it. I just thought about it. So.
No, that's a good thought.
I think the TPRs, this is Mate from Red Hat OpenShift. TPRs will be handled mostly by the SIG API machinery.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I know that's probably the most important thing. So I doubt that we can help with any sort of that. And if so, then this will be mostly done by the core contributors for Kube, I guess. So that's one thing. As for the cron jobs, I can speak since that's part of, this is the my piece of cake in Kube. So initially we thought that we will be able to graduate cron jobs to beta in 1.6. Unfortunately, that did not happen due to the amount of effort needed to for this to happen. I'm hoping that it's doable for 1.7 though. I think that the biggest effort will be probably on the controller side. There are some quirks because just the actual move is a very simple thing to do. But I'm not 100%.
Do we know the gaps that stopped it from going to beta in 1.6 that still need to be completed for 1.7? Is that documented somewhere?
No, there is no document. I just started working on 2 PRs with regard to that one. One is changing the defaults, and the other one is actually doing the move. And this is where I tripped off with controllers, and probably partially, and that will again will require some input from the SIG API machinery with regards to multi-versioning support and API groups.
Hey, this is Dan. I think at KubeCon, did you also mention that there was something with like limiting the number of active cron jobs at any given point, so that it doesn't sort of
that landed already in 1.6.
Okay.
The thing with that is that it's not enabled by default. You need to explicitly set the value for I don't remember the field's name, but you need to explicitly set the field's value so that there are no more jobs left behind by the cron jobs after it runs. Because if you don't set it, a cron jobs can create a unlimited number of jobs behind.
Okay.
Also, is cron jobs API somehow constrained by what happens in jobs? For example, having failure policy in jobs, wouldn't that be useful for cron jobs as well?
So generally, the job template that is part of the cron job is literally a job spec. So whenever a job is updated, the same thing applies to a cron job. So if we address the problem with the failure policy for jobs, that should nicely apply to cron jobs as well. Since cron jobs controller is responsible just for creating jobs, it's nothing any different with that.
All right. Okay. So we got a handle on, I think you've got a rough handle on that. Don't be surprised if we start coming around and asking questions on it again. If you've got some more of those details, if you could fill them in as sub-bullet points, that might help some of the folks who aren't here who start coming around with questions again to not come bug you and start asking those same things over again. So yeah, if you could just fill those in, I'm sure some folks would appreciate it. So
sure, I'll do so.
Thank you. We can finish off with the Kubernetes tooling. Some of the stuff, like Helm, that keeps its flow documented elsewhere, App Controller and charts have figured out a fair amount of who's doing what, where, and when, and filled that in. So thank you for that. So in this case, I'll jump to, for the app registry. I see in 1.7, there's Go library plugins for Open Compose, and then the 1.0 spec. Is that the goal for, is anyone on who can talk app registry?
I can talk a little bit about app registry.
Sure. Are these the basic things, or do we think there'll be more? Any of that? Go ahead, sorry.
These are essentially the high-level goals for that time frame, because app registry is still a third party. It's not necessarily tied to the Kubernetes release, right? Mm-hmm. So we're basically just trying to make what we've got more available and plugged into the ecosystem. And through that, obviously, we need to move from Python to Go and actually finish a stable definition of the spec that everybody can agree on.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any opinions on any of this stuff, I recommend you check out the GitHub repo and start making issues talking about the spec, because what we currently have is a prototype and not the end goal. Our end goal is to make something that's optimal for the entire community, right, and not just our own goals.
Thank you. And then we have Compose with a K and Open Compose. Did anybody want to add details on where those are going in 1.7?
Yeah, so it's a little bit confused right now because we will discuss this week with other people contributing to Compose and Open Compose. So I don't have anything for those right now, to be honest.
Okay. Then that is a quick go at 1.7 planning. For anybody who will have details they think they can add later this week, please come back to this document and feel free to add in any of those extra details. It'll help those who are kind of trying to look at everything holistically and have a high-level picture, know what's going on, and not all come ask the same questions. But some of us need to do this, so if you could, it would be appreciated and useful and helpful. So thank you in advance. And with that, we have 10 minutes left. I'll go ahead and open up the floor for anybody who has anything else they'd like to talk about. All right, so far we've got nothing. This is the last call. Is there anything else? Okay, well then everyone have a wonderful week. And remember, if you have a topic you want discussed, if you have a demo that you'd like to share, please reach out to Michelle and myself, and we are more than happy to help get the topic scheduling in so we have space for it. Otherwise, everyone, have a wonderful week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.